अरे मैं अनम्यूट नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ और वो सिस्टम में भी नहीं दिख रहा है.
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, thank
Can
you.
you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can listen to you. Uday is there. Dr. Dinesh Purani?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. And Rajit?
Rajit needs to unmute.
I'm here, sir.
Okay, so I would request my panelists to keep them unmute and keep their video on. So we have only one slide actually, and this
Sir,
first is...
can I comment in this? Dr. Somani has said it is not sponsored. It's not the monoclonal antibody.
Okay.
Is there, but it's
Okay. So okay, I correct
I just
myself.
wanted to send the sentiments to you.
Okay, I correct myself. This is not an industry sponsored symposium, but we really want to learn. And the first question, if I ask my panelists, is how frequently do you use monoclonal antibodies? And I presume that this is about daratumumab upfront in newly diagnosed multiple myeloma. And from seniority, actually, I will go Professor Jeena, then Dinesh Purani, then Uday, then Ranjit. I think that I hope this sequence is okay, one by one.
Dr. Pankaj, thank you for getting me into this panel discussion. I'm really honored to be here. And to answering your questions, we'd love to use monoclonal antibody for our patients with diagnosed multiple myeloma. There are certain indications, as we all been knowing, and we have listened to the previous speakers who have mentioned about different trials where daratumumab is used. So the thing is that we are not in our center. We are not using monoclonal antibodies upfront in our newly diagnosed cases, in our multiple myeloma cases. This is
okay. I think that right now with the first question, I just want to know what is the usage. So you are not using.
Center, we are not using it. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Dinesh.
We have used in a very few patients someone who is with a renal failure with a high light chain, the NAMDA ratio. We have used in a few, but very rare, not much.
Okay, so if I say just can you give rough percentage, like out of 10 patients, how many patients probably? Just guess.
Maybe a 5% or maybe lesser than 5%.
Okay, so maybe 1 patient or less than 1 patient out of 10 patients. Okay, and then Uday.
Sir, we have used it in only one patient, and out of 240 new patients in the last 2 years, we have used it only in one patient upfront.
Okay, and Ranjit and Professor Lalit is also there. So AIMS experience upfront?
Not upfront, I think. We have only less than patient. It really relapse like third, fourth, fifth line.
Okay. So I can actually conclude that upfront usage of monoclonal antibodies like daratumumab is very, very low in our Indian scenario.
But it's likely to go up, sir. The more and more evidence is coming up, and probably.
So yeah, so
will be one issue,
so is it the cost factor, or is it the you are not convinced of its use? Dr. Jeena, is it the cost factor you feel, or?
Yes, definitely it is the cost factor, and there are certain indications for our patients.
Hello. Yeah. So, hello.
Or what?
Dr. Jeena.
Yeah.
She is not audible.
Yeah.
We don't have any the phase 3 trial to show it is better than this one. Many times you see a phase 2 trial showing a good efficacy, but that doesn't turn out to be true in the phase 3. So before we start doing it for everyone or many patients, I think we should wait for the phase 3 trials.
Okay, you want to wait for the mature data. And Uday, army mein what is the, the medicines are given free of cost. So what is the thing there?
Means, sir, like finances are still a major issue for us because we still have to write multiple documentations and others justifying the cost for it. So I would agree with Dr. Jeena that it's a cost issue that is hampering because we still have some phase 3 data as of now. We have some data to definitely suggest it has got a very, very good effect, but it's the cost factor.
Okay, and Dr. Ranjit?
I think cost factor is most important thing. The second
Okay.
thing is the data. The data is
Okay.
not that problem.
Okay, so I take from all the panelists that one is the cost factor, but they are also not very much convinced right now with the available data. Yes, Rahul, you wanted to make comment.
The thing is, in India, at this present moment of time, my fellow panelists have already spoken about it, but I would say 90% is the finances which is hindering. There's enough data from a Griffin trial or any other trial you take up where the data is going to be added as a backbone to everything.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I don't think so that the data is going anywhere. So more and more data you will see. The only problem is how it's going to do in a standard risk or a high risk cytogenetics. Even this data this time in ASCO has shown that in a high risk, the benchmark goes up, but without providing too much of a overall survival or a progression-free survival. The response rates gets increased in a high risk group, but the daratumumab is not able to overcome the high risk group as such.
Okay, so I take this your point that there is enough evidence to use DARA, but the cost factor is the main. So I'll ask my panelist, and I'm sure they must be doing risk stratification of myeloma upfront. And Dr. Gina, how are you doing risk stratification? Dr. Gina, are you back?
Adam is muted.
Dr. Gina, can you
Yeah,
unmute?
can you hear me
Yes.
now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, for all our newly diagnosed patients of multiple myeloma, we do the risk stratification. Even though all the tests are not available in our center, we do outsource. And for since we are doing bone marrow aspiration and biopsy, we do the karyotyping, and there is a panel which we carry out for all our patients and diagnosis.
Okay, and combined with this, if let's say you don't have the cytogenetics or karyotyping or FISH, then how do you risk stratify? Let's say the sample was inadequate or they could not, carry out the thing. So then how do you risk stratify?
We take the help of fluorescent in situ hybridization and pick up, try to do the
Yeah,
test.
let's say if that information, for some reason, because of technical reasons, you don't have that information, then how do you risk stratify?
Then we go by the ISS staging, RISS minus the karyotyping reports. So that is how the staging of the disease plus LDH.
Okay,
level.
thank you. Dr. Burani, you have any comments here on these two questions?
We try to have a FISH on the most of the patients. If you don't have a FISH available, then definitely we have to use the other factors of RISS, as Gina said. So I agree with her.
Okay, and I am sure both Dr. Uday and Ranjit would also agree with that. I think then the most important question, and Rahul was also raising the same question, which group of patients do you consider using monoclonal antibodies upfront? So if let's say the finances are not an issue, then whether it is the standard risk or the high risk, and I think this is this is for debate, but just we want to listen from our panelists what do they think, and then we can have opinion from Dr. Lalit Kumar and various other people. Dr. Gina?
Yeah, as of now, whatever data we have, and it has been recommended that whenever we are to use monoclonal antibody, especially in our country, we are using daratumumab in certain cases. This is the standard risk group. When we risk stratify a diagnosis standard risk group patients, we can give daratumumab, lenalidomide, and low-dose dexamethasone. Or in cases, some of the patients cannot tolerate bortezomib. In those cases, maybe we can consider for daratumumab, adding the 3-drug regimen, daratumumab, lenalidomide, and dexamethasone. These 3,
Okay.
and that is for standard risk group of patients. And as we know, 4-drug regimen also are now used upfront. However, in our center, we are not using it for any of our patients.
Okay, so you would still use as 3-drug combination taking DARA with either lenalidomide or bortezomib. Dr. Bhurani?
Dr. Rahul has said he will use it in everyone, and now he's not lifting only the hand; he's lifting both the arms up. So we need to listen to Rahul. But till we don't have a phase 3 trial on monoclonal antibody with PRD, I'm not going to use it in everyone. I agree with the renal failure and high FLC ratio and high risk disease. I don't know how much benefit it does in the high risk disease. Apart from that, I would like to wait for the data.
Okay.
So, no, let's say even if the finances are not an issue,
I'm not talking about the finances. I'm at the
okay,
moment,
you are still not convinced about the data. Okay.
We need to see a phase 3 data of DARA with VRD versus VRD. We haven't seen a phase 3 data.
Oh, you mean not in the form of full paper or abstracts?
As I remember,
Enough
this
data, sir.
Okay.
Sir, enough data.
Okay,
I think
Rahul
we have
will
to
come
wait
back
for
to you.
some.
Yeah,
I think
Uday,
we
you
have
have.
to wait for some more data.
Okay, Uday.
Sir, we would love to use, sir, if finances are not an issue, definitely in high risk patients and patients who have got deletion 17p and patients with, though FLC ratio is not a labeled high risk thing, but those patients who have got very high FLC ratios. So in those patients and in patients with renal failure, as Dr. Dinesh mentioned, sir. So we'd love to use a combination of DARA BRD.
Okay, so
Or
you
a DARA
would use.
BTD, or a
Okay,
DARA
you would use 3-drug or 4-drug combination.
4-drug combination, sir.
4-drug combination. Okay, Rajit, your views?
Sir, I'll take it by the eligibility. So,
Okay.
in transplant ineligible patients,
Mm-hmm.
it had produced only the benefit in the standard risk patients.
Okay.
I mean, VMP versus DARA VMP.
Mm-hmm.
It has produced a benefit in ISS 3.
Mm-hmm.
It had produced a benefit in standard risk patients. It had not produced a benefit in high risk patients.
Mm-hmm.
It is because possibly the high risk numbers are less. But if you look into the data, it is clearly crossing 1. So in a transplant ineligible patient, if it is a VRD this thing, then probably VRD is the standard of care. And when you look into the DARA and VRD information, it is not in the transplant ineligible patient, it is in the eligible patients. In the transplant eligible patient, when you look into the toxic effects of addition of DARA to VRD, you can look, there are very high chances of this pulmonary infections. The pneumonias, the incidence is 13%. When you look into a controlled study, if it is 13% in a controlled study, you could see that in your real clinical practice, it might actually go. And we know that we are more comfortable with VRD, so VRD is the choice. The second thing is in transplant eligible patient, it has also shown that it has got some impact on the stem cell mobilization and the final harvest as well. Now,
Okay.
course, in US, they use Plerixafor for almost all the high-risk patients. In Europe, they will do a cycle mobilization. I mean, if you look into the data, there is some problem with that. But when you look into a standard risk, it has always produced a benefit in the standard risk patients. But when it comes to high-risk patients, it does not produce the benefit. When you look into the renal failure data, actually in renal failure, the amount of information which is available for daratumumab, it is not much. Though we understand that in those patients who even undergo dialysis, the pharmacokinetics, it doesn't change. But you require more information for this drug to be used in renal failure patients. You can use it often, but the information to recommend the usage of daratumumab in those patients with renal failure is actually less. The other group is those patients who have got amyloidosis. Now, there is some recent information. Now, this is more clear. Now, those patients who are upfront this thing, treatment naive amyloid in association with myeloma, they are primary systemic amyloid. The amount of cardiac responses and kidney responses are actually the best, even though the numbers are very small. But as compared to the Meldex and the bortezomib-based combination regimens, it appears that it is good. So that is one subgroup where you would be more inclined to use DARA. It has not got some further cardiac side effects in addition to all the regimens, because VRD is not a standard of care in amyloid. Okay, amyloid
Right.
it is. Yeah.
Okay, so I got your point. But if you look at the Mayo recommendations, Vincent Rajkumar recommendations, he says that use this in high risk population. I agree with you that the data is for the standard risk, but if you look at the Mayo guidelines, they recommend it for the high risk. So what is your take on that?
So I feel high risk it might produce some extra responses, but to produce a benefit, it requires something better than Dara. That is what my personal feel is. We are looking forward to more better antibodies beyond daratumumab.
All
That
right.
might not be the answer.
Okay, so we go to Rahul because Rahul, I think, have a lot of comments on this. So Rahul.
So the philosophy of multiple myeloma is what is need to be defined. If it is a progression-free survival, we can't jump from one surrogate marker to another. When we say overall survival, then we say progression-free survival. No drug will show overall survival in any context till now. One. Second, when it comes to standard therapy, make it standard more deeper, the better the response. Everybody will agree that the deeper the response, better is the progression-free survival. Whether Uday has shown after 3 years or 5 years, whatever it is, deeper the response, you achieve a stringent CR followed by MRD negativity, it is better. Will you agree to that? If you agree to this philosophy that stringent CR should be, MRD negativity should be the surrogate marker in multiple myeloma, then the upfront 4-drug regime has produced a 42% stringent CR, which is in a Griffin trial, which adding daratumumab to the backbone shows. Third point, in a standard risk therapy, better, deeper the response, more the deep, better it is, more the merrier. For a high risk response, if the response rates, the bar goes up from 20% to 30%, 10% more people get added and get a better progression-free survival. In India, best chance is the first chance. So you can utilize that as a bridge to transplant, followed by transplant and followed by maintenance. The toxicity point of view, when it comes stem cell harvest, either way around after 4 cycles of VRD, everybody is using Prelixafor these days. In our center now, Prelixafor is being utilized, collect 2 doses, keep one into preservation, take it for another one. So the additional toxicity does not play a major role in daratumumab. If the finances is not a problem, we have started offering upfront to everybody in today's scenario. Though people only 1 in 20 will grab that opportunity of daratumumab, but if it is restricted for 8 cycles, 8 weeks followed by transplant or 12 weeks followed by transplant, I think more and more people will come into the ambit, will achieve better CRs and VGPRs, CRs and stringent CRs for transplant, which will ultimately, we feel, get translated into overall survival after 10 years.
So thank you, Rahul. I definitely agree with one thing, that if you are using upfront, probably you are using daratumumab for a limited period of time, whereas when you are using for a relapse setting, you have to use indefinitely. So if you are using upfront, probably as Rahul said, that you would use for 2 months or 3 months, and then you would go for the transplant. So Dr. Lalit sir, if you can summarize some of these comments and your views on the same.
Okay, Uday, carry on.
So one small comment before you close it up. The thing is that people have sufficient data. That's something which is not actually true, because we have a phase 3 trial of 1,080 patients or something from 2015 to 2019, which was published in Lancet in 2019, of Cassiopeia trial, which is a phase 3 trial in newly diagnosed multiple myeloma patients. And wherein in Cassiopeia, they had done double randomization mode at the beginning and post-transplant. And if you look independently, till transplant, what was the effect? And after transplant, what was the effect? The DARA has been clearly shown to be beneficial. The addition of DARA to the backbone of BTD has been shown to be beneficial both in achieving MRD negativity, SCR, PFS, and OS. So the data is there to show that combination of DARA to a triplet in the upfront setting has a benefit both in short term as well as in long term. Now the median follow-up of that data, because it was a 2015 onset, the trial enrollment. So the median follow-up as on date, which was presented yesterday evening in the EHA, was only of 4 years, which is a small period. But 4 years still is a good period to understand the efficacy of a drug. So giving a quadruplet where DARA was along with BTD/PRD would not be a problem as far as data is concerned. So we should not be harping about the data is not there. Data is definitely there. And yesterday's there have been 11 abstracts on data combination to newly diagnosed myeloma patients in to various backbones of triplets. So data is going to evolve, and all the data till date is going in favor of a data with triplet. Thank you, sir. Thanks for giving me
Sir, Professor Lalit, sir, if you can summarize and if you can give your views.
So, Dr. Lalit, you have to unmute yourself.
2 points. One that will be having
There is a disturbance. So
I will probably feel that we should use it for the high-risk patients to begin with. So your goal is to really achieve the higher number of CRs and MRD negativity. That's one. And secondly, patients who have undergone transplant and post-transplant, but if you find that somebody still has on day 100 MRD positivity, then that could be one scenario that we may like to add the daratumumab. That is what I think probably we can economize the use of daratumumab as of now. Really, like if we have run out of the various options, then at least for some patients it really gives you chance that they have gone for a couple of months to years.
right, sir. Thank you so much for